Hi, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I start a short series and it's simply called Understanding the Zambian Budget. The objective to try and make the budget as understandable, as simple as possible for all of us so that we can have informed conversations about topical matters, what it means for us, what we think should happen, what part we will play. I'll try and keep it as factual as possible so that you can draw your own conclusions. It's something that I think is very important in our discourse as citizens, businesses, individuals, you name it. I thought to start with one of the most topical subjects in our budget, the mining sector. So when I think about the mining sector, it's like the goose that lays the golden eggs, or the geese that lay the golden eggs. How so? You've probably heard of the story of the farmer who had a goose that laid golden eggs, one every day. And over a period of time, the farmer became very wealthy. He became wealthy and then he became impatient. One day he decided to cut up the goose to try and extract all the golden eggs. Lo and behold, there were none. What am I talking about? The mining sector for Zambia is our goose that has laid golden eggs since time immemorial. I think we all agree to that fact. The mining sector has been the backbone of Zambia's economy, its economic growth, its social development for a period of time, and that still remains the case. It's a big part of our economy. The whole economy rises and falls to a large extent depending on what's happening in the mining sector. And so why do I say it's like trying not to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs? In the budget, the Honorable Minister of Finance proposed certain measures to try and stimulate the mining sector, to try and eliminate issues that the mining sector had identified as being problematic over a period of time. Why? To try and revive the sector, to get it to a level where it's operating, producing, selling at a scale that allows the whole economy to start to recover and recover at a rapid rate. To start operating at a level that allows the sector to carry along with it a number of other sectors that are dependent on it or could potentially be dependent on it when you think about new ideas such as how we add value to the copper and the other minerals that we produce. Mind you, our mining sector is not just copper, there are other parts of it, although copper is the most dominant. So there's been a lot of debate, the issue of the treatment of mineral royalties, tax deductibility of mineral royalties. What does that actually mean? There's a general principle in accounting and taxation that any expense or any outflow that you incur in the ordinary course of business should allow you to benefit from a tax perspective, tax relief. Let's look at a simple example so that we add context to this conversation. Here it is. Let's assume that a mining house has revenues of $100 million. And I'll compare and contrast the old tax regime, i.e. what has been in effect for 2021 going backwards, and the new tax regime, which is what is in the budget for 2022. So revenues, $100 million. Mineral royalty is computed at 6%. So that means the mining house will pay $6 million in mineral royalties, all right? That is irrespective of whether it was the old tax regime or the new tax regime. That will give you an accounting profit before tax of $94 million. For simplicity, we have assumed the only expense that is being incurred is the mineral royalty itself. So we could argue it's not practical, but for simplicity, it allows us to illustrate the point. So accounting profit before tax is $94 million US. However, we now need to compute what's called the taxable profit, That is the profit on which the Zambia Revenue Authority will compute its tax due. In the old regime, what would happen is you would add back the 6 million minority to arrive at a taxable profit of $100 million. In the new regime, you will not add back the $6 million minority that you've incurred. So you have a taxable profit in the old regime of 100 million, in the new regime of 94 million. You then apply the tax at 30%. Under the old regime means you have a tax payable, a corporate tax payable of 30 million. Under the new tax regime, $28.2 million. That is your corporate tax payable. You then add the 6 million minority to then determine what is the total amount that has been paid to the Treasury. Under the old regime, 36 million. Under the new regime, 34.2 million US dollars. So it then begs the question, was the old treatment fair for a business? Was the old treatment one that allowed a business to make investments or incentivize them to? It's worth mentioning that of all the major mining jurisdictions across the globe, there is no other that we could find where minorities are not deductible for tax purposes, i.e., you do not have a tax relief on account of having incurred the minority expense. In this example, you can see that there's a difference of 1.8 million US dollars between the old tax regime and the new tax regime. The minority is still there. It is that benefit of $1.8 million that's making the difference. You can multiply that out to much larger figures to determine how this actually has affected businesses. Because obviously the numbers are probably bigger than what I've shown you. Think about your own business. It's like you incurring a rental expense, an expense to hire employees, which you believe is in the course of your business, and then you do not get tax relief for that. Would that incentivize you to hire more people? Would that incentivize you to invest more in your business? I'll leave that to you to decide. So why this and other tax measures? To try and get a competitive tax regime that compares favorably with other jurisdictions, because remember, Zambia and other countries where there are mining operations are competing for capital. If an investor is sitting offshore, they're trying to look at where should I take my money? And assuming all factors are constant and the only thing is a difference in tax treatment, that could actually impact whether or not that investment is destined for Zambia or elsewhere. But you can make that judgment for yourselves. The other thing that is desired is a tax policy that is stable over a period of time. Why? Because mining is a long-term type of investment, 10, 15, 20 years, even much longer. So the investor wants to have an environment which is stable, so too does the government, because that stability and predictability then helps the investor to plan, the government to plan as well, because they know for this period of time, these investors will be there. But I hear you asking a question. What about the geese that are there and we can't seem to find the golden eggs that we know or suspect that they lay? What do I mean? There is an argument about those entities that have operated for a long period of time and perhaps have not generated the results or the profitability that the stakeholders have perceived they should. What do? An illustration. It's like you have a problem with your finger, and excuse the slightly graphic illustration, and you need to have it amputated. Would you come and amputate your arm at the elbow? The answer is no. You'd amputate where the problem is. And that is what I think at least should be done. If there's a problem, then you deal with that specific problem. Understand why is it that this goose is not laying any eggs when all of its friends seem to be thriving? Is there something in its environment? Is there something in its feed? What is it? Same. Is there something about this particular operation that makes it a challenge? Is it the nature of that particular mine? What is it? So you target that particular entity, understand what the issues are, and avoid coming up with a policy that injures the goose that's laying golden eggs, as well as that one which isn't. That, in summary, is what we see with the mining sector, at least the intent that has been put forward in terms of some of the policy amendments. I'll let you judge about whether it's a fair policy or not, or it's something that you think is unfair to the country. The numbers are there. Think of yourself as a business, what would you do? Think of yourself as an investor, what would you do? Think of the government, what would you do? Thank you very much.